Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. You are at the Steam Next Fest Q&A session. Today, we're mostly going to be talking about the October edition, although generally speaking, most of the Next Fest stuff is pretty similar across Next Fest. So if you're looking towards February or a later edition, this is a perfect time to ask your questions anyways. This is a sort of a Q&A format. So there is a button on the bottom of your screen, at least I think it's at the bottom, and it's going to say Q&A. Please put all of your questions in here. There is also a chat function, but it's a little harder to keep up with what's going on in there. So we'll use the Q&A session. As it's intended. So please feel free to put your questions in there. If we run out of questions, I will just keep talking. So keep me on topic by telling me what you want to hear and learn more about. So I'm going to start really broad. My name is Ria. I'm on the Steam business team here in Bellevue, Washington, and I work on a number of different things, including working with publishers and developers on getting their games on Steam, trying to make Steam a better place for both our partners and customers, and very importantly, I work on a lot of our events. So Next Fest is one of the things that I work on, which is why I'm here today, and I will be taking your questions. I will just get into it, I guess. I think the first thing to say is the next edition of Next Fest is going to be that October Next Fest. That one is starting on October 19th. Registration for that is closing at the end of the month, so you've got a few more weeks before you have to make a decision on whether you want to register for this edition or if you want to register for a future one. We do run Next Fest 3 times a year in February, June, and October, and we are doing that again next year. Feel free to pick whichever one makes the most sense for your game. Remember that you can only join one Next Fest per game, so you got to make sure that you're picking the right one for whatever you're trying to get out of it. So let's get started with your questions. We've got a question from Alexander Martin. Do I need to have a game trailer before I send my demo to Next Fest? Yes and no. It's very good to have a game trailer, and I believe it's one of the things that is on the release checklist for you to be able to get your store page out there, but it is not necessarily required. I would take a step back. If you're not ready to have a trailer for your game yet, you might want to consider if this Next Fest is the right one for you. There are a lot of things that people are going to look at when they come to your store page to decide whether or not this game is for them, and the trailer is going to be a big part of that. So it's good to have one ready. It's not good to have a bad one. Also, you want to make sure that that trailer is representative of your game and the kind of gameplay that players can expect. But if you don't have that, if you never plan on having that, that's one thing. But if that is on the roadmap for later on, be sure that you give yourself enough time to put your best foot forward for customers. A question from Harris. What is the single most common mistake first-time Next Fest developers make that you see repeatedly? This is it's a good question. There's a lot of things that people maybe make small missteps on, but I think the biggest thing that we see is people rush so much to get everything in order for Next Fest that they don't have the time or they don't take the time to step back and say, okay, what am I really presenting to customers? It's really important, for example, to make sure that your store page is representative of the game. You know what your game is about. Everyone that is working on this game with you knows what your game is about. But you should find someone who hasn't been working very closely on this game and ask them to tell you what your game is about. Show them your store page and your screenshots and ask them if they can understand what the kind of game you're making is about. If they can't give you a good answer there, that means you need to put more work into your store page. There's a lot of things that people tend to forget on the store page, like that short description is really important. It needs to be descriptive. It's not enough to say, play as the princess slaying the dragon. That doesn't give people enough information on what kind of gameplay to expect, whether there's a lot of story involved, and sort of just a lot of that description around what the gameplay is going to be like. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would give advice on is make sure you play test your store page against someone who doesn't know that much about the game. We've got a question from Will. Does the store page need to be live to the public in coming soon by the submission deadline? So there's a couple submission deadlines. So the the first one that is coming up is going to be that registration deadline at the end of the month on August 31st. We do say that a coming soon page is required, but if you have been poking around in there, you have probably noticed that you can get around that. That being said, it is our ask that that coming soon page is available. If you need to have a shorter coming soon phase and you really don't want to have that up by the end of the month, that is fine. But keep in mind that this does slightly reduce the number of opportunities available to you. One, we have an official trailer that goes out with every edition of Next Fest, and we select a bunch of games to be in that trailer. And if we don't have a coming soon page from you, then we can't, there's no trailer for us to look at. So that's number one. Number two, is we do put up a page that we call the developer preview, and that allows you to preview where your game is going to show up in Next Fest. Next Fest is categorized by genre and then subgenre, and we also have themes and also features. And so there's a bunch of different places your game may or may not appear in Next Fest. You do have to have a coming soon page for us to show you as a preview which carousels that thing is going to show up in. So it's important that you have that available to you at some point ahead of Next Fest so you can do a little bit of pre-work to make sure that you're showing up where you expect to be. But other than that, it's kind of up to you on when you want to put that coming soon page up. But it's kind of it's always been our advice that put it up as soon as you're ready, as soon as you have the core gameplay loop, decided on, as soon as you know what your art style is going to be. There's no harm in putting that page up early. Steam does not track how long the coming soon page has been up. We don't penalize games that have been in coming soon phase for forever. So there's functionally very little harm in putting that page up early, unless you're putting out something that isn't representative of what you think your final game is going to be about. So once you've sort of passed that point, it's a good time to get that coming soon page up. Ryan's got a question. Does Steam Deck compatibility help with visibility during Next Fest? No. We don't do anything Steam OS or Steam Deck compatibility related with Next Fest. We do not rate demos for compatibility. And that is because you guys are welcome to change your demo build at any time. And this is a time we see high iteration in those builds as people fix bugs or you respond to customer feedback. So all those opportunities are all great times to accidentally break compatibility. So we just don't do that for Next Fest or for demos in general. Swim Penny has a question. Presently, I do not have a dedicated store page for my demo. Should I have one? This is actually kind of up to you. We haven't found any solid stats to say one way or the other that a standalone demo page does better or does worse than a attached demo. The biggest difference is, of course, you get reviews on your standalone demo page. That can be valuable if you have a extremely successful demo. Sometimes it helps customers decide to play the demo if they can see a bunch of other people have had a really good experience with it. The opposite can also happen if you ship a build of your demo that has a lot of bugs or crashes a lot. Your first reviews are probably going to be negative, and then that's probably going to discourage people from trying out your demo if they land on the demo page and they see that it's a negative experience. So it's kind of up to you and how much faith you have in your demo. It might not be a bad idea to start that as not a standalone demo, just to make sure that people can download it, people are having a good time with it, they're not, crashing before launching it as a separate standalone page. But at least for Steam Next Fest, there's no requirement either way. We do not prioritize one over the other, so it's about doing what makes the most sense for your game. Question from Alex. Given the increasing popularity of Next Fest, what are the best ways to still stand out? So you should know that the way Next Fest runs is a little bit different than the rest of the Steam store. So Steam in general is what we call a reactive platform, which is to say, we don't choose things to be on the front page because someone here in Bellevue thinks that the game is really good. Instead, we let customer behavior drive what is showing on the homepage. So everything that you see on the homepage is more or less driven by some um, algorithm that's looking at what games people are playing, what games are people around you playing, what are people like you playing, based on your play history, based on your location, based on what's just globally popular. So everyone's store page on Steam is going to look a little bit different. Next Fest is a little different. For the first 48 hours of Next Fest, everything is completely randomized, with the exception of the charts page. But everything else, when you go into the features section and you look at games that support multiplayer, when you go into the genre section and you go look at third-person shooters, those carousels are going to be entirely randomized. And there's the only thing that Steam cares about in that moment is whether or not the customer looking at the page um, can speak the languages that you have tagged to your game. So there is a little bit of filtering in that. Let's say I am a customer that only speaks Portuguese. If your game does not support Portuguese, then Steam is less likely to show it to them because, hey, if I only speak Portuguese, I'm not going to be able to play your game. So that does exist. It's important to know that that level of filtering does exist. It just shunts it to the back of the line. It doesn't make it, invisible, but it is something that we do. But otherwise, everything is completely random. After the 48-hour mark, we start turning on what we call the custom, or I guess we don't have an official terminology for it, but it's the personalized view, where we start filtering things to the front based on what players like you have been playing. So if I'm a player that really loves open world survival crafting zombie games, then Steam is going to look at what other people who love open world survival crafting zombie games, and they're going to say, oh, they're all playing these demos. They're wishlisting these games within Next Fest. I'm going to show these titles at the front of the carousel for me. So it's not a winner takes all. It's not like if you're super successful during the first 48 hours of Next Fest, we're going to show your game to everyone. It is customized to that player and what kind of games they like to play. But that does come in after the first 48 hours. So the most important thing is to make sure that your game is representative of what you are trying to get at. If you are a cozy farming simulator, your store page should scream cozy farming simulator. If you are a really tough logic puzzle game, make sure your store page looks like it's a tough logic puzzle game. Because it's way easier for customers to understand what your game is about if the store page matches the experience. And that means we can get a lot smarter about what we are recommending. Sometimes you get store pages that, oh, this looks kind of like a dark fantasy. It's a little gritty. It's going to be a complicated game. But the actual gameplay itself is much softer and much more casual. Then you get a customer mismatch in expectations, and the people who are actually into your real gameplay might not see it because the store page for it looks like a more complicated or a more difficult title. So making sure that those expectations are met is really important to making sure that you not necessarily stand out, but you're giving people a good understanding of what your game is going to be about. Charlie has a question. During the randomized discovery period at the start of Next Fest, should developers think of exposure as roughly equal opportunity, or are there still eligibility or relevance filters affecting how often a game appears? So this is about the first 48 hours. So as I mentioned, it's totally random with the exception of language support, which is going to push your game to the back of the queue if the player looking at the Next Fest page does not have your language That's something they speak. Other than that, it is totally random. There's no eligibility other than, of course, you need to have a coming soon page and you need to have your demo up. But there's nothing else that is going to affect where your game shows up in those first 48 hours. So, um, super equal opportunity. Put your best foot forward. Good luck. Um, Sasha has a question. For VR games specifically, what signals does Steam consider most important during Next Fest when deciding whether or not to give a game more visibility? So I'm actually going to answer this more generally. So not just VR, but every single game type on Steam. In Next Fest, we care about a couple of things. One, is going to be, are people playing your demo? The other thing we're going to care about is, are people wishlisting your game? Basically, everything else doesn't matter to us. So some people worry about things like like demo completion rate. We do not worry about that whatsoever. Some people worry about how long are people spending in my demo. We also don't worry about that. There are lots of different types of games. There are some demos that can go on infinitely and some demos that go on specifically for just 10 minutes. And we really don't want to try and distinguish between which is good or not, because that's just going to depend on what the demo is trying to present to the customer. So the only things we look at are if people are playing that demo and if people are wishlisting your game. Everything else is useful, I think, maybe for you to take into account and ask your fellow developers to get a sense of if those numbers are good for what you're trying to accomplish. But that's kind of all we care about. I've got a question from K Fancy. If I made substantial updates since my game was reviewed, is it possible to resubmit for review? No. Once we review your game for the first time, we do not do it again. That being said, you can always write in and ask us to take another look. We're happy to do that, but there's no formal process for that. The most important things is just make sure that whatever features you promise on your store page, you still have in your game. Um, for example, let's say you eventually plan on supporting 9 different languages in your game, but right now you only have 6. You should only have 6 on your store page. Add in those last 3 once you've got those ready to go. Don't do it ahead of time because that is going to be misleading for customers who are only looking for those last 3 languages right now. So um, feel free to ask if you'd like us to like take another look, but we do not require that you resubmit for review. Oh, okay. Zach has a question. Does NextFest registration survive a partner account transfer? Yes. The answer is yes. I don't think a lot of you will run into this situation, but it is worth talking about. You do have the capability to transfer apps between partner groups if you change your business registration, if you make a deal with a publisher and you need to transfer that app. Everything that is app level, which is including NextFest registration, that goes with the app. So if you're transferring it to a partner, ahead of the start of Next Fest, don't worry, that registration is going to stick right with it. Kuzi asks, what exactly are the benefits of participating in Steam Next Fest versus just launching the coming soon page and publishing the demo whenever? The best thing about Next Fest is that people expect Next Fest to happen and people are looking forward to Next Fest specifically. On Steam, all the time, there are always free demos and other ways for people to get a sneak peek into your game, whether that's through playtesting, again, demos or other platforms, such as like just launching that coming soon page. The thing about NextFest is it's one of the only times on Steam where we are specifically putting a lot of focus on unreleased titles. Most of the time on Steam, we really focus on games that are available for customers to purchase. And so NextFest is a little bit unique in that this is the time where you get, free, not free. It's where a lot of people are coming in specifically to play demos. Hopefully you can be part of that wave by being in Next Fest, but there are plenty of games that launch their demo months in advance of Next Fest and then join a Next Fest later down the line. It's kind of my opinion that if you have a demo for your game, you should participate in Next Fest. full stop. You've already done the work of creating that demo. It doesn't matter to us so much when you launch that. We do not ask for exclusivity or anything like that, but you've done all of the work. Next Fest is a time when a ton of customers are coming in to specifically play demos. You should throw your ring in the hat, or throw your hat in the ring rather, and get more use out of that demo that you've created. So yeah, it's just a time when a lot of people and a lot of press are writing a bunch of articles about unreleased games, and so that's a really good time for you to join that. Zeka asks, is there a minimum wish list number recommended for games before participating in Next Fest? There is no minimum number in that Steam does not care about what number you enter Next Fest with, and it does not use your wish list numbers in anything in regards to how your game is sorted. Again, those first 48 hours on Steam are really valuable. Or sorry, not on Steam. Those first 48 hours of Next Fest are very valuable because that's when we start looking at activity around your game. So, um, when is the best time to release your coming soon page ahead of Next Fest? It depends on you and what your plans are. If you've got an opportunity to join another event ahead of Next Fest, that might be a good time to get some early feedback from customers on your demo or your store page. So I think it is valuable to release your coming soon page early, just so you can get time with customers and real people and get their impressions of what your game is going to be about. But there's no minimum wish list number. If you have just throwing random numbers out there. If you only have 37 wish list, I don't think that means you shouldn't participate in the October Next Fest. Similarly, you could have 47,000 wish lists, and this Next Fest could be not the right one for you. It just depends on sort of where you are in your marketing and development cycle. Are you trying to use Next Fest to get wish lists? Are you trying to use Next Fest to get a lot of feedback about the direction that your game is taking? Just kind of depends on what you're trying to do there. Participate in the Next Fest. That makes the most sense. And I would worry a little bit less about the exact number of your wish list and worry more about whether your demo is a good representation of your game and whether or not your store page is reflective of what that gameplay is going to be like. Uh, Okay, I am not going to be able to pronounce this, but McDoodoo asks, do I need to have a game build submitted for the main game app before the end of this month if I already have the demo app build approved? So do you need your base game's build review to be completed before Next Fest? And the answer is no. You can actually go into Next Fest without having any build uploaded at all for the base game. We only care about the demo, and so as long as you have that demo up and ready for customers to play, that's the only thing that we care about. Dallas asks, if our game is planned for early access shortly after Next Fest, is there any recommended minimum gap between Next Fest and the early access launch? Um, I'll answer this question also just for regular 1.0 releases. No, the only requirement is that you release the game either into 1.0 or into early access after the conclusion of Next Fest. So once Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific comes around, you can do whatever you want with the game. There are plenty of games that hit the release button right there on the dot. That's works well for some of them. Some of them, it doesn't go as well as they intend. Some people wait 2 weeks, some people wait 2 months. One thing that we like to say is that there's never a perfect time to release your game, right? There's always going to be other things happening on Steam, in the gaming world, in the world in general. Trying to time like the perfect date to release your game is really difficult and frankly features a lot of things that are not in your control. So pick whatever date is the most comfortable for you and the team working on the game. If you do Next Fest and you get a lot of feedback that the color grading in your game needs some work, fix that before you release the game. If you have a multiplayer game and a bunch of people say that, oh, the latency that they experience playing the demo is pretty bad, you should fix that before you release your game. So It's kind of up to you. Early access is also a time when customers understand that a game is still under active development. So if everything is great, except you've better refined your future roadmap, it'd be totally fine to release into early access as soon as Next Fest is over. Again, mostly about you and your game and what you and your team are ready to do. Um, we've got a question. Um, this one is not necessarily Next Fest related, but I will answer it from the imprint. Has early access lost its meaning? It used to mean that it was an unfinished game that was still in development, but now it's expected that everything works since people are paying for it. Should a half-baked game be released into early access? I think that's a good question. I think that the way people view early access games now is probably quite different from when it began, but I think people still very much understand that early access games are in development. There are some things that I think customers believe that they should not be charged for, and that is going to be an extremely buggy, game crashing title. That's not fun for people. That is not really a game that is in active development, I think, so much as going through the bug testing phase. I think early access is great for games where you have a general idea of the gameplay, you know sort of in which direction you want to go in, but you want customer feedback to help you understand where you should be developing. If you already know exactly what you're going to do, you're not going to budge on what features you're adding to the game, you're not looking for customer feedback to help guide how you're developing the game. That does not sound like an early access game to me, so I would encourage you to just release your game into 1.0 once it is feature complete. But aside from that, I think very rightly customers want to have a good experience with what they're spending their time and or money on. So that's also really important for your demo. Yes, it's just a demo. Yes, it's free, but you want to make sure that customers are still having a good time with it. If it crashes really often, if you run into really bad bugs, that's a bad experience for people, and they're not likely to come back and actually buy your full game or spend more time on you or this game in the future. So making sure that people have at least a clean experience for what it is to play your game, I think that's really important, regardless if we're talking about the demo or if we're talking about your game in early access. Question from Charles. Is there an ideal or recommended amount of content that should be in the demo for Next Fest, like an hour's worth or so, etc.? Um, this is where I say my favorite thing. It depends. It depends on the kind of game you're doing. So, we've had a lot of roguelike games come through Next Fest, and roguelike games you can play kind of infinitely. There's been some really successful roguelike games that have come out of Next Fest, and I know that there are people out there who spent tens, if not hundreds of hours with the demo because that loop can go on infinitely, right? There are some Next Fest graduates that have done really well with very short and sweet demos. It very much depends on the genre that that your game is in and what kind of experience you want to show customers with the demo. It's important, I think, that the demo is representative, again, of what it's like to play the base game. But you also want to make sure you don't give them everything, right? So I think roguelike games are a particularly interesting example of what you can see in terms of like what people do with translating the base game into a demo. A lot of times, they limit the number of items that actually show up in the pool for a roguelike title, or they, scope it down so that you can play, but, the customer can kind of see in the distance that there's going to be all these other features and all these other items that they can play with in the base game. And that's a great way for people to get really excited about the gameplay loop, but not give away so much that they choose not to come back. And the other thing I want to say with demos is if someone plays your demo and then decides that they don't want to buy your base game, that is a success, right? If your demo is representative of what it's going to be like to play the base game, someone comes in, tries the demo, and goes, oh, this is not for me, that's actually a really good thing for you. The worst thing is when someone goes and buys your game, has a bad experience with it because their expectations for what the gameplay was going to be like does not match what your game is actually about. they refund the game, they might leave a bad review. That's not a good experience for anyone involved. So I think don't forget that people playing your demo to end up not buying or wishlisting your base game is sometimes a good thing. It can help you refine the pitch for your game. We all know that, we all have our favorite games and favorite genres, and not every game is for every person. So making sure that, you can help narrow down your customer base to people who are actually going to enjoy the game, I think that's also a really valuable thing to be focused on. All right, water break, 1 second. All right, Jonathan asks, my demo is ready to go live now, and I'm past all of the required waiting periods, but the next fest I am going to participate in is October. Is there a difference in how demos perform during the fest? Is there a difference in how demos perform dependent on whether they went live early or debuted during the fest? All types. All types have done well. There are some games that have done really well in doing a bunch of marketing beats with that demo ahead of the launch of Next Fest. Some games have launched that demo right with Next Fest and have had a lot of success. So kind of depends on what else you've got available to you. I always suggest releasing your demo at least a day or two before Next Fest actually begins. This is because you never know what kind of game-breaking bugs that people are going to run into, and it's really valuable to have a little bit of debug time before Next Fest goes live. Um, you know, no matter how much QA you do with your game, there's always going to be someone out there on the internet who manages to find some really weird bug or exploit in your game that you would have never found no matter how much QA you did. So give yourself a little bit of time, at least like a day or two, to make sure that those kinds of bugs are out. But other than that, I don't think there's a real correct answer in terms of whether you should release your demo super early or if you should wait until Next Fest begins. Question from Hoon Kim. Will having the store page translated to multiple languages have different store feature listing priority based on Steam client's language and region? Yeah, so I talked a little bit about this earlier, but there is a little bit of customer to language matching that happens on Steam. So as mentioned, if the game that you are making is going to support German and the customer is capable of reading German, then that's great. We're going to show it with full visibility. But if the customer looking at the store page only speaks German and your game does not support German, we're going to put it at the back of the queue because, I mean, as you might expect, we don't think this customer is going to be able to understand your game. So that's probably not going to be a great experience. Mind you, if you have a game that is mostly visual and doesn't rely a lot on text, that's something where you might want to go through and do the work of supporting the menuing in all the languages, and then you can check every single language. Again, be realistic here. So like if your menuing isn't available in Italian, do not say that your game supports Italian. But otherwise, making sure that you have the highest language availability for your game, as is possible for you and your resources, is going to be a good thing to do. The other thing that is sort of adjacent to that is that your store page can be localized into a language that may not necessarily reflect the languages that you're going to support in game. So that is an interesting way for people to build sort of data on the game. So you can localize your store page into, let's just say, Korean, even though your game doesn't support Korean. And you can see how that changes people's behavior. If you get a bunch of wish lists from people in Korea, that might be a signal to you that, hey, people seem to like this game in that area. I should consider adding localization to the game. So making sure that that is accurate is the most important thing, but Steam is a global platform. It's good to make sure that you have as wide of a reach as you can. Okay, question from Drew. Do you have any advice for making the most out of the press preview? How do we present what we're doing to get the best engagement? I think this would be interesting to ask press. Obviously, I can't do that. But what we give press is we give them a preview page that looks pretty similar to the developer preview. And we say, hey, here's everyone that says that they are going to participate in Next Fest. Go check it out. And we give them all of the information that you gave to us to give to press, if you gave them anything. So for instance, if you gave us your email address to pass along to press, we will do that. If you gave us nothing, then we obviously aren't going to send them anything. So when you look at it, there's really only two touch points for them, right? One is you've given them access to your email if they want to reach out and ask questions. And two is they can see your store page sort of ahead of time and know that, oh, there's going to be this game in Next Fest. So a lot of people pre-write their articles, or at least I assume they do that because those things come out on the dot when Next Fest begins. So that can be a valuable thing for you to maybe be eligible for. One thing people ask is, should my demo be available during the press preview? And the answer is, if you're ready for it. Certainly, I think a lot of press are probably not waiting until Next Fest begins to start playing through some of these demos. So if you launch it early, you can maybe catch a journalist's attention during the preview phase and get them to write an article about your game early. But again, is your demo ready? Are you ready for people to judge your game based on the version of the demo that is available at press preview? If the answer is yes, then maybe that's a good opportunity for you to hop on. There is no downside really or shame in not having your demo available during the press preview. Press understand that a lot of you are probably going to wait until Next Fest begins. They're going to make a short list of games that are interesting to them based on the genre that they write about or the various kinds of mechanics that they want to feature in their article. And they can come back on Monday, like the rest of the public. But making sure, again, I think I sound like a robot at this point, but make sure the store page is, representative of your game and, let press write about your game if it's something that they want to write about. Whoa. Focus on this camera is going a little crazy. All right, you guys can just deal with me being blurry. We've got a question from I'm just going to go on. What are the current store page review turnaround times, and what are the most common reasons that first-time pages get bounced? So right now, the store page review time, I think we say is 3 to 5 business days. And that is, I think, still the case. There are so many of you that come around during Next Fest that we do slow down quite a bit. So getting your page in for review early is good. That also applies to your demo review as well. The thing that trips people up the most is making sure that everything you say is part of your store page and or demo build review is actually in the game. So for demo build reviews, one of the things that trips people up quite a bit is language support. So a lot of people say that, hey, my demo is going to support A, B, C, D, E, and then we go to review the build and language E is actually not included. That's going to come back as a failure and you're going to need to fix that before we can review it and then hopefully eventually pass you. You should know that it is extremely common for people to fail build or store page review at least once or twice. So it's totally fine if you do. The only thing is obviously that failure is going to come back to you. You're going to need to fix it and then resubmit it for review. And so that's going to extend the amount of time that it takes before you are approved and all ready to go. So just make sure you're giving yourself as much time as you can in between the submission of the store page review or the build review and when you need that thing to be live. So as early as possible, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier, but you can update your build review at any point, even after you've passed review. So if you've got most of the thing done now, maybe submit it for review now. You can keep working on that build as time goes on, and you can just make that update after it's gone through build review. A question from Muhammad: how much does running a developer live stream during the week actually move wishlist and impressions? It depends. There are some people who are extremely successful with live streams, and there are a lot of people who are really not successful during live streams. So I think it depends on you actually, and your game. Are you a person who is skilled at doing live streaming? Like a lot of things, to be a good streamer is a very different skill set than to be a good developer is. And there are plenty of people out there who are fantastic game devs that are not great on stream. And so I would say focus on your strengths. If you're comfortable doing a live stream and you think you're going to do a good job of it, then that might be worth some of your time. If you're not good in front of the camera, if you can't stand to hear yourself speak, then maybe don't. Or find someone else to play your game instead and put that up as a live stream. The reason why we took it off the homepage and put it in an optional tab is because we saw a lot of people pouring a lot of effort into live streaming, even though that actually has very little to do with how good their game is going to be. So we wanted to take the pressure off so you don't feel obligated to do a live stream. And so, in this universe where we've moved it off the homepage, I would say do it if you have time and if you've got energy, but I wouldn't worry too much about what the impact is going to be if you don't. Um, Question from the imprint. Do initial negative reviews have long tail for Steam algorithm? i.e., is it risky to have a bad review at the beginning since that will tank the game's discoverability in the future? Question mark. So Steam's algorithm generally doesn't care about the review rating of your demo and or your base game for all things across Steam. If you dip into the red, so if you become negative or overwhelmingly negative, that is a place where the algorithm is going to start taking some notice. But everything from a low mix to all the way to overwhelmingly positive is going to be treated the same from the algorithmic perspective. However, just because the algorithm doesn't care about it does not mean that human psychology does not come into play. You guys have probably all done this, but going to a games page and seeing a 94% positive versus a 64% positive has a very big impact on how interested you are going to be in continuing to look at that store page. So, in that sense, initial negative reviews, Steam doesn't care about them, but other customers might. So, that can be kind of tough. I would say, again, make sure you have a really clean build, that you've play tested it across a bunch of different machines and across a bunch of different people, and it's, a good experience to play. As long as you are comfortable, passing that hurdle, I think the standalone demo page is totally fine. Steam as a platform does not care, again, about, whether you're mixed or overwhelmingly positive, but the people looking at the page will. So Steam doesn't care, but people do, and because Steam is driven by people's actions, it is relevant for that reason. Question from Hoop Dynasty. If we release the demo on October 8 for the press preview, can we wait until October 19 to send the one-time demo notification to wishlisters so it coincides with the start of Next Fest? You have exactly 14 days from the launch of your demo to when you are no longer allowed to send that email notification. So yes, you can totally release the demo on October 8th and then wait until October 19th to send the demo notification to wishlisters. That's totally fine. Um, Luciano's got a question. I'm a minor. My parents have published the game and I'm just developing the game. Can I participate in Steam Next Fest? We don't have any knowledge of that. So if your game is on Steam and it is all good to go from the perspective of having a demo available and having that coming soon page available, you can do whatever you need to do. That's not something that we're concerned with. Muhammad asks, if our demo has bugs or crashes that we discover mid-fest, what is the actual process/timeline to push a fix? That is entirely up to you. You can push that fix at any time. Again, once you've passed build review once, we do not require that you go through build review again. So you can just push that fix live pretty close to immediately. Obviously, you still have to go through Steam Pipe and you have to go through that whole process of actually uploading the build, but that's basically going to be up to the speed at which you can fix it and not so much somewhere where we're going to be in the way. Pan asks, are there cases where a game can be rejected from participating in Steam Next Fest? Or will every game that submits before the deadline be included as long as it meets the requirements? The only reason why we reject games from Next Fest is if it has already participated in a previous Next Fest. So that's the only hard rule. You can only participate in one Next Fest per game. As long as the game is still incoming soon and you have a demo, you can participate in any Next Fest. That's the only requirement that we have. If you think that you have a special situation that I didn't cover in that list there, I do want to say you can always send us a ticket. If you go to Steamworks in the top bar, there's that support button. Write a ticket in that goes to myself and the rest of the team. And we can help answer your specific query there. This Q&A is like pretty general, so if you've got a hyper-specific question, that support button is probably the best place to get in contact with us and tell us about your very specific story. Mojo Games has a question. Do we have a breakdown of platforms that are most used for Next Fest demos? No, we do not have that. I think your instincts are correct that most people are playing using Windows. I do know that there are a lot of people who like to try a bunch of demos on their Steam hardware. We do not make any promises that the demos will run on Steam hardware, so it's kind of on, at your own risk. Some people really enjoy doing that, but I would say that a majority of users are going to be coming through just a regular PC machine running Windows. If you're curious for more information on this front, if you search for the Steam hardware survey, you can kind of see that month. Every month we do a survey of a random selection of people using Steam, and we get all sorts of data on their hardware if they give us that access, and then we publish those results. So month to month, you can go see how many people are using Windows, how many people are using Mac, how many people are using SteamOS. And so that can be valuable information for you if you're trying to figure out if you want to support something like a Mac build of your game. I'd highly encourage you to go take a look at that data. Mike asks a question. If you're running multiple versions of the demo, do both count towards metrics? We only allow one demo per game, so I'm a little bit unsure of what you're talking about here. But if you're running different branches of the same demo, which is something that you could do if you wanted, yeah, both count towards metrics. Players are only going to be playing one at a time, so no sense in splitting that information. Uh, Spellbound Studios asks, do multiplayer games work well for Next Fest? Is it advised for the demo to have a decent single player mode? There are a ton of games that do really well during Next Fest that are multiplayer. I will say that it is a lot more complicated. You have to make sure that your server capacity is able to handle a random influx of players at any time during Next Fest. That can be pretty tough. And during the low hours, it can be really annoying for someone coming in at like 3 or 4 a.m. to try and play a multiplayer demo if they don't have other people to play with. So having some kind of fallback for that, I think, is very important for multiplayer games, whether that's bots or a single player mode. But yeah, multiplayer demos can do really well. I think in general, they have the most capacity to sort of spike customer interest because if someone really likes the demo, they might go recommend their other friends come play, and that can have a really big snowball effect. But I think it really depends on how comfortable you are with your own server architecture and your ability to handle very variable loads on your servers, and whether that's going to be a good experience at both the high and the low points in terms of people coming in to play. Question from Eden. This October will be my first Next Fest. What would be your essential to-do list to make sure you get the most out of it? Okay, so one, playtest your store page, playtest your demo. Grab that cousin of yours that only plays Farmville, put them in front of your store page, ask them if they understand what the game is about at all. In general, people who are browsing NextFest are going to be more savvy than, a person that doesn't game very much, but I think non-gamers are a very useful tool to identify how clean and how good you've done in terms of like really getting across the gameplay. For instance, I think most people here probably know what a Metroidvania is, but not a lot of other people do. And, Metroidvania as a term isn't necessarily used globally. So you can use that word, but you want to make sure that the store page shows the platforming aspects, the skills, how that comes into sort of the looping aspect of gameplay. You want to make sure that you have the words to describe that without using sort of in genre only words, because that makes your game more accessible to more people. There are people out there who might really love Metroidvanias, but they don't have the words for it yet. So you want to be the one to grab them into your game. You can introduce them to that word later on, but make sure that, you are targeting the correct audience for your game and you're not only using sort of in-genre jargon. That's number one. Number two, other than playtesting your game, make sure that you are responsive. So if someone comes in and says, "Hey, I found a game-breaking bug," you should try and fix that during Next Fest if you can. If you can't, make sure you thank the person for reporting it in and you acknowledge that publicly somewhere so people feel comfortable that you're a responsive developer who is going to make sure that the players have a good experience with your game. And so that's number two. Number three, make sure you have somewhere for people to leave feedback. People will leave feedback all over the place, whether that's going to be in Steam forums. If you have a Discord, they'll leave feedback there. If you've got an email, some people will write in there. Make it easy for people to understand where you want that feedback. They will go wherever, but if you want all of your feedback in Discord, it can be useful to have a link to that Discord channel, very easy and prominent for people to access. If you want them to put that in a bug thread in your Steam forums, make sure there's a really easy way for people to get to it, because otherwise you're going to try and have to manage like a bunch of different places for that feedback, and that's going to be a pretty big use of your time. So those are the three things I would say are on the essential to-do list. Hoop Dynasty has a question. For games that combine multiple genres, what matters the most for correct Next Fest placement? Registration categories, the top Steam tags, or actual demo player behavior? Uh, it all matters. I would say that your registration category is really, really important, right? So if you're telling us that you are a puzzle adventure game and that's what you've put in your Steam Next Fest registration form, we are going to take you for your word there. And you are going to be mostly categorized in the puzzle and adventure genres. Now, do we take other tags into account? For instance, things like open world or action adventure or automation. All of those things we do take into account, but specifically for Next Fest, we put a lot of importance on what your registration category is, so make sure that is accurate. Outside of that, making sure your tags are accurate is again going to be important for customers because that's one of the first things they see when they go to your page. And I'm a person that will never play any sports game. Sorry, Hoop Dynasty, I think you guys are a sports game. But like I will never play any of that, and you want me out of your store page like immediately. Like it's not a good use of anyone's time for me to hang out on your store page. So you should get me out of there. Making sure that sports is, really prominent is going to help the right people stay on your page and maybe download the demo and then wishlist your game. So tags are really important for that. You don't want to be misleading. And if you have a bunch of different demos or a bunch of different genres for your demo, just trying to distill it down to what people really think the gameplay is important because there's a certain point where if you mash all the genres together, people have no real understanding of what the gameplay is going to be like, and so you're going to lose them before you get into the demo. All right, I've got 5 minutes left. So I'm just gonna plug a few things. Again, if you've got any questions that we did not get to today, check out documentation. We've answered a bunch of pretty common questions in there. Two, if it's not answered in there, go ahead and send us a ticket. Again, in Steamworks in the top bar, there is a support button. You can send in a ticket there and ask your questions there. We're happy to answer that. And then we are also going to be posting this Q&A on our YouTube channel. We have all of the other Q&A sessions in there as well. So if you'd like, you can go take a gander through the past and you can see past me, and also my coworker Alden typically comes and helps with these as well, and you can see what other people have asked over the years. So I will answer a few more before we get to the end of this. Paula asks, do you think NextFest drives a lot of eyeballs on a store page? It can. It absolutely can. We have seen this for so many different titles where NextFest was a really big moment for them, where it got a bunch of people aware of the game, it increased their wish lists by a ton, and did a lot to really help the game get into a good spot for release. There's also a bunch of games that haven't done super well during Next Fest, whether that's a combination of the art not being super compelling or the store page still being a little unpolished. It's kind of hard to say, it's hard to point to one thing that really drives the success of a demo one way or the other, but it is a big opportunity. It's why so many people are interested in it. It's why so many customers come in to try out demos. It's why it's kind of become a big thing. So um, try and make the most out of it. It is kind of, in a way, a microcosm of how Steam is as a platform. If you can't do, if you can't get anything out of Next Fest, you probably want to sit and really think about what your store page is presenting, how your game is proceeding along in development, because if you can't get anything out of Next Fest, it's probably going to be a little difficult to get anything out of Steam in general unless you are able to make changes between point A and point B. So it's a nice time to just get feedback on how people are perceiving your game and get feedback on how compelling your store page is going to be to customers, because the same customers who browse through NextFest are also people who go on to purchase games. So take this as an early feedback session and learn as much as you can from it. Um, okay, I've answered a bunch of these. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Cute Snoot Studios asks, is there any data on how players prefer to contact a developer during Next Fest for bugs, suggestions, etc.? No. And that's because different people like different things. There are some people who live on Discord and they only want to do everything on Discord, so be on Discord. Some people prefer a subreddit for some reason, and you can have a bug thread up on the subreddit for them to submit. It's kind of very dependent on every game community, so I would just say give them a place to start, and if everyone wants to migrate somewhere else, be flexible and open to just shifting your attention to wherever they are instead. Um, um, Anonymous asks, if I find a bug while waiting for a review of my demo build, is it better to update it ASAP or wait for the review to complete? Kind of up to you. We review the build that we have available to us when we do the review. So if you update it, it's possible that we'll get to your review before or after you submit the fix. But it's better to get that up to date, I think, if you already know how to fix it and you have time for it. All right. Fiona has a question, which my coworker Jenny was gonna answer, but sorry, Jenny, I'm gonna take this live. Since a game can only participate in one Next Fest, for a game that may launch several months after the event, what would you prioritize more? Joining when the demo is ready, or waiting for the Next Fest closer to full release? This is another one where it depends, and it depends on what you're trying to get out of Next Fest. If you have a shape of a game and you're really looking for feedback from customers on what is the most fun part of the game, is it the incremental money go up loop or is it the mining gameplay? That is a great use of NextFest because you can get a ton of very unsolicited opinions from customers on what they think you should focus on. And they might even suggest things that you didn't even consider as part of the gameplay loop that makes your game fun. In that case, you want to, join the next fest as early as your demo allows for, and you want to get that feedback early so they can help drive the development of your game. If you already know what your game is going to look like, and if you are trying to get, wish list momentum for the release of your game, in that case, participating in the next fest closest to the launch of your game is probably going to be the best option for you because you've got the most, the demo is the most polished that it's ever been. Your store page has the most information on what it's going to be like to play your game. That's probably going to be the best time to participate in an X Fest if you're searching for wish lists specifically. So it kind of depends, but do what feels right. Okay, we are at the hour mark. Sorry to the folks whose questions I was not able to answer. But again, I'll say it one more time. If you look on Steamworks, in the top right is a button that says support. Please feel free to ask your questions through tickets. Super happy to answer them there. Happy to answer your questions there, even if it's not about Next Fest. We take all sorts of inquiries and questions and comments in there. So don't hesitate to reach out. This is the end of the Q&A here today. This will be on YouTube probably in the next day or two if you'd like to review it. But otherwise, I will see you all at a Next Fest, either October or a future one. And if this is your first experience with the Next Fest, highly recommend browsing the event as a customer. Go see what other people are doing. I think it can be very valuable not only to use Next Fest as an opportunity to get feedback on your own game, but also as a market research opportunity to see what else other people are doing out there. The most creative and the best ways to promote your game and your demo or your weird gameplay loop, your fellow developers are going to be the first people to find that. So you can be part of that crowd and, see what's out there. Anyways, thanks all for your time. We'll see you at the next one. We do have another one that is coming up towards the end of the year for the February Next Fest. But otherwise, have a good day.